You have tuned into The Voice of Medicine, the medical podcast filled with remarkable stories, first-hand experience, important research, and valuable life lessons. Open your mind, relax, and enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Voice of Medicine. I am very happy that you tuned in because today you're in for a treat. My next guest is Dr. Edward Hallowell. Now, for those of you who don't know Ned is a board-certified psychiatrist, world-renowned expert in the field of ADHD. Coming from Harvard, he wrote unbelievable 20 books, one of which is called Married to Distraction, How to Restore Intimacy and Strengthen Your Relationship. He also wrote books about ADHD in children. He wrote a book, Worry, Hope and Help for a Common Condition. He was featured on Oprah, Today's Show, Good Morning America. Without any further delay, let's get to the topics. Ned, hi, I'm very happy that you made it to my podcast.
Well, it's great to join you.
Ned, I mean, it's safe to say you are the expert for ADHD in the US, if not in the world. And the thing I would like to ask you from the very start is, how big of a problem or a struggle is ADHD really?
Well, if you manage it properly, it's not a struggle at all. It's wonderful. But if you don't manage it properly, it can ruin your life. And that's what makes it such an interesting condition to have. You know, it's probably conservatively 5% of the population around the world has it. I think many more than that have it, but it's all a matter of how you define it and how you diagnose it. It's a fascinating condition because the way I describe it simply, it's you have a Ferrari engine for a brain. You have an incredibly powerful brain, but you have bicycle brakes. So you have trouble controlling the power of your brain. And if you learn how to strengthen those brakes, then you become very successful. You become a great entrepreneur. You become a successful artist. You become a great chef or whatever it might happen to be. But if you don't learn to strengthen those brakes, then that's the prison population, the addicted population, the unemployed population. So it's very high stakes poker. It can go one extreme way or another. And that's what I've been in the business of trying to teach people about and help people deal with for, well, I'm 69 years old now, so I've been treating it since I finished training in 1983.
Mm-hmm. It is a very powerful, let's say, energizing resource, but if not handled properly, it can be very damaging. It's basically that's what you're saying.
Yes, it can make you or break you.
Okay.
And I'm in the business of helping it make people, not break them. If they don't know about it, it can break them. And it's really sad because, you know, it's a tremendous waste of talent to see these Ferraris in the junk heap, you know, when they could be winning races and gathering trophies. For example, the man who founded JetBlue Airlines has ADD, David Neeleman. The person who was just the CEO of AOL and Yahoo has it, says it's the key to his success. The woman who was the CEO of Indigo Books in Canada, one of Canada's most notable entrepreneurs, has it. So very high achieving people have it. The man who won the Nobel Prize for discovering the polymerase chain reaction has it. So in chemistry. So, you know, people at the very top of various fields have it. But as I said, so is it overrepresented in the prison population and in the addicted population? So you want to catch it. You want to find out if you have it. And the telltale signs among adults are unexplained underachievement and a mind that tends to wander when you're not interested. You can hyper-focus when you're interested, but when you're not interested, your mind wanders. And so what happens is you forget, you overlook, you don't hand things in on time, and you underachieve. You lose jobs. You keep getting told you need more discipline. You need to get better organized, and until you learn how to do that, you're underachieving and maybe failing altogether. But once you do learn how to do that, then you can go to the very top.
So this is how you basically spot this condition with adults. And once you spot it, you can work with it, and you can start managing it. Now, this is, I think, very different for adults and for kids, right? How is
It's
it
not
with?
different. It's not different.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's the same thing.
Okay.
But it just presents differently in a classroom. Again, you're looking for unexplained underachievement. So these kids are not working up to their grades are not as good as their brain power would predict. And they are disorganized, and they're not handing things in on time, and they're speaking out of turn, and they're seem to be daydreaming, and they're constantly getting told to try harder because the teacher ascribes it to lack of effort. But it's not lack of effort, it's lack of focus. Telling a kid with ADD to try harder is like telling someone who's nearsighted to squint harder. It misses the point. And the teachers who don't understand this just continually are punishing these kids, reprimanding these kids, lecturing these kids, and that doesn't help at all. In fact, it hurts. It makes them, it diminishes their whole sense of purpose in school, and they just feel bad about themselves. And that, of course, reduces their motivation, and they begin to check out, and that compounds the problem altogether. The real learning disability, I have ADD myself, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I also have dyslexia, which I wouldn't trade for the world. The real damaging disabilities are shame and fear and believing you're defective, believing you're stupid. That's what really damages a child. And if you don't understand what's going on, that's what will happen. That by the time the child reaches 12th grade or college, he or she feels defective, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So what you want to do is identify it early, in 5th grade, 6th grade, and the signs again are disorganization, procrastination, underachievement, distractibility, impulsive talking out, and realizing that this is not a discipline problem. It's an organization and focusing problem. The treatment is coaching, lifestyle changes, and medication is an option. And medication helps about 80% of the time.
So how do you help teachers or maybe even parents in identifying this condition properly? Because I'm also sure that, it might be true that there is a lot of kids who are, being told they should try harder. And it doesn't make sense because they have this condition. But there are also some kids who really are, just maybe a little bit lazy, or they lack the motivation. So how do you teach the people who are responsible to spot it correctly?
Well, it's up to a professional to make the diagnosis. So what the teacher should do is identify telltale signs, raise the level of suspicion, and then send the child for an evaluation. And then what you need are evaluators who are good at doing that. And unfortunately, we don't have enough of them.
Mm-hmm.
You want to send them to a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a learning specialist, someone who's good at doing that. And then once you find that person, you get the correct diagnosis. And the treatment is absolutely life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. It's extraordinary what a difference it can make.
Do we know anything about who is, more likely to be afflicted, or if there is any kind of predisposition?
See, I don't like to say afflicted. I like to say blessed. But
okay,
sure,
sorry, blessed.
If you want to say afflicted, okay. No, we don't. It is genetically transmitted. So if a parent has it, it's more likely that a child will have it.
Also, sorry for using the word afflicted, but I have to.
Most people would.
I have to admit that
I'm unusual in how I see it. But I really do see it as a potential blessing. So, like I said, I wouldn't trade my ADD for the world. And I know for a fact David Neeleman, who founded JetBlue, wouldn't trade his either. So, if you do manage it properly, it becomes a great asset. And that's what we need to teach people about, and remove the stigma and remove the ignorance really that surrounds this condition. Because when you do, then people can really take advantage of the wonderfulness that, I tell people I don't treat disabilities, I unwrap gifts. But the only way I can bring people to me is to have them not feel ashamed, because that keeps people away.
But I think this is important. as you can see, even I have to admit now that I looked at it from the pathological lens. But it's important to have people like you who bring another point of view into this discussion. And you said it beautifully, is unwrapping gifts. So I think it's great that we have somebody like you, shedding a little bit of light on the positive aspects of this. I would also like to talk with you about the book that you wrote about the topic worry. So during your work, what did you find out? Why do we worry in the first place? And when does it become a problem to worry? And perhaps a funny question, should we worry about people who never seem to have a worry ever in their life?
Well, yes. I mean, the absence of worry is a big problem. We call it denial. Having no worry, you're in great danger. Your worry system is your natural alarm system. It lets you know if danger is near, if someone is about to rush up on you and attack you. You want to know that. Or if you have a pain in your chest and you're going to have a heart attack, you want to worry about that and go see a doctor. If you don't, we call that denial. And it's why a lot of people die early, because they deny medical problems, or they deny financial problems, or they deny marital problems. So denial is sort of the refusal to worry. And it's in and of itself is a way of dealing with fear, which is essentially what worry is, but it's avoidance at its most extreme. So yeah, not worrying at all is a big problem. But then the other extreme is what I call toxic worry. I mean, there's good worry, which is problem solving. That's worry at its best. Worry, the alarm signal, the danger signal. Something goes off, whether it's a physical pain or a bounced check, or some fight you have with your friend or your spouse, and you say, okay, this is a danger signal. We need to do something about this. And so you sit down and try to solve the problem. That's good worry. The toxic worry, bad worry, worry that is pernicious and dangerous, that usually happens when you worry alone. And so, my mantra is never worry alone.
Mm-hmm.
When you worry alone, you tend to globalize and awfulize and catastrophize, and rather than problem solving, you problem worsen. You get paralyzed, and you just imagine terrible outcomes, and you instead of coming up with solutions, you come up with more problems. And toxic worry is bad for you physically, bad for you mentally. It's a terrible state. So the way to get out of toxic worry is don't worry alone. Talk to someone. And then the next step, I have a 3-step series, is don't worry alone, talk to someone. Then the next step is get the facts, because toxic worry is usually rooted in wrong information or lack of information, or both. And then once you get the facts, step 3 is make a plan. And once you have a plan, you feel more powerful, more and less vulnerable. And those are the 2 variables that create toxic worry, the feeling vulnerable and feeling lack of control. And once you have a plan, you feel less vulnerable and more in control. And then the next thing you know, you're not having toxic worry anymore. You're having good worry, and you're solving the problem.
In your personal opinion, what do you think? How is this toxic worrying connected to, let's say, clinical depression?
Well, if you're depressed, you may be too listless even to worry. So, sometimes a depression actually blunts worry, but it can also exacerbate it. I mean, it takes a certain amount of energy to worry. And if you're really depressed, you may not even have the energy to worry. But the 2 can go hand in hand. You can have, if you're very depressed, you can just see everything as bleak and dark. And so you can worry about everything. You can say, my food is terrible, it's poisoned, or, I look awful, life is terrible. So, in the grip of depression, you can worry about everything. And the other way around, if you're in a state of toxic worry, in a state of high anxiety, that can be depressing. So the 2 go hand in hand, depression and worry.
On a more positive topic, I think you also wrote a book about fulfilled life. And I'm not sure if I recall this correctly. The idea was that you have to learn certain thing as a child, so later on as an adult, there is a higher probability, or it's ensured that you really have a fulfilled life.
Well, no, I wrote a book called the Childhood Roots of Adult Happiness.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
It was what parents can do as they raise their children to maximize the chances that child will grow up to be the kind of person we all want our children to grow up to become. And turns out there's a lot of evidence, not just philosophy and sort of homespun wisdom. There's a lot of evidence as to what parents can actually do to maximize the chances that their kids will turn out to be what we hope children will turn out to be. And at the core of that is this notion of connection, which is what I think drives pretty much everything that's good in life. And a connected childhood is really the key to it all. And as many positive connections as you can have: connection to family, connection to friends, connection to pets, to a dog. Everyone should have a dog. Connection to school, positive feelings about school, connection to teams, clubs, organizations, connection to God or some sort of spiritual practice, connection to nature, to special places that you love in nature, connection to traditions, rituals, and all of those create the sort of the soup to grow up in of positive connection. And that's really the key to a wonderful adulthood. It's not achievement. And a lot of parents in America, anyway, in the United States, think the key to a great adulthood is a high achieving childhood. And it's just not. The best way to maximize the chances that you'll have a wonderful adulthood is to have a richly and positively connected childhood.
I get it interpersonally. You have friends in school, peers, but then, I don't know, connection to, for example, spiritually and so on. Could you perhaps explain it a little bit more? I cannot really put my finger on it.
Love. It just means love.
It just means love. Okay.
Love of nature, love of a dog, love of God, or love of the spiritual world, however you envision it. Love of a place, love of a lake.
So a feeling of belonging somewhere, for example, would that be incorporated or?
Sure. Sure. Connection, belonging. I don't know what you have trouble with connection about, but connection, attachment, belonging, love, it's all the same. You feel you want to be there. You feel at home there. You feel warmth. You feel one of, you feel a part of something larger than yourself that is beneficent. That's connection. Mm-hmm. And the opposite, disconnection, is the source of most of what's bad in life. People who feel disconnected, who feel, apart, that's what drives most of what's bad. What depression, drug abuse, suicide, you name it, that usually derives from disconnection.
Now, you also mentioned that it's rather suboptimal to put achievement as a value for children to pursue.
Yeah, a connection drives achievement. The goal should not be achievement.
Okay.
The goal should be connection, and then let it roll. What the parent, the teacher, the town, the society should do is set up the conditions that will allow for connection, that will allow for loving attachments, that will allow for a kid to fall in love with soccer or football, if you call it that, or will allow for a kid to fall in love with a dog, with a blade of grass, and then the rest will happen on its own. Achievement will happen on its own. There's a natural desire to get involved, for the imagination to invest in some kind of activity and then to develop that activity. You don't have to flog achievement at all. In fact, it's a mistake to do that. Then you turn it into something the person doesn't want to do, and that's why so many kids hate school. Mm-hmm. If you allow achievement to happen spontaneously, to come as naturally as leaves to a tree. It's what Keats said about poetry. It had better come as naturally as leaves to a tree, or it had better not come at all. That's the way it ought to be. Then it becomes self-sustaining, and the fuel, the kindling for this is connection. when you create a force field of positive energy, of love at its most distilled, then the rest happens automatically. You don't have to stand over it with a whip and say, do this, do that. It'll happen automatically. And in fact, standing over it with a whip retards it. It makes it so the person doesn't want to do it.
So basically it creates pressure, and the pressure is crushing the people instead of really motivating them or like pushing them forward.
Absolutely. I mean, who the negative, it's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
It's primitive. It's backward. It's what most people fall back on because they lack the imagination to think of a better way to motivate people.
Speaking about pressure, I would like to go to the topic of today's world. Being very high paced, everything is sort of buzzing. Even I think the expression "being busy" today is extremely on vogue. It's If somebody is not busy, then he sort of doesn't have a life, or he's not productive, especially at the workplace. And we also live in a world with lots of distraction. I think this was another topic of one of your books called Married to Distraction, I think. And you were trying to explain people how to focus properly.
Yeah, a lot of my books have been about how to focus, how to work in a world that's full of distraction. I wrote another book called Crazy Busy, Overbooked, Overstretched, and About to Snap. And the notion is being busy is no status symbol. It's a great mistake. What you want to do is to be positively engaged. What you want to do is to be creatively engaged. You want to be doing something that's productive, that's meaningful, that you enjoy, and that adds value to the world. And usually, being busy detracts from that. Being busy usually is not being terribly productive, unless you're one of those people who can both be creatively engaged and busy. And some people are like that. But most people, the busyness is a camouflage for not being terribly creative. Instead of being creative, they're being busy. Instead of doing something interesting, they're being busy, using a lot of keystrokes, but not a lot of brain strokes.
The problem is that we made it a status symbol, as you said, being busy as being something positive. But then I don't know if it was Newport who wrote the book Deep Work, who was advocating literally deliberate practice. Also, that I think Angela Duckworth wrote a book about this, where she was emphasizing deliberate practice, so where you literally focus on one thing and you engage. And even in this engagement, you get a flow, but you're really there, and that's where you get the maximum out of whatever action you're doing right there. But in your personal opinion, what can people do, or how can they train to counterbalance this buzzing world around them? What can they do practically?
Oh, it's one of the things you can actually control, unlike global warming or something like that. Turn it off, slow down. Build boundaries. You can do that. You do have a choice. Don't overcommit. I mean, we become victims of our own enthusiasm. The internet opens up so many possibilities. It's like the Chinese menu syndrome. There are so many possibilities, but you have to exercise your willpower. You have to learn how to say no, and it's very hard. It's very hard. We're all victims of our own enthusiasm, and we tend all to overcommit. And then we rue the day. We say we have more to do than time to do it, but we've set it up. We've let down our boundaries. We've let everybody in. We've overcommitted, and so you have to learn to have boundaries. You have to learn to say no. You have to close the door, turn off the cell phone. Don't take it to bed with you. It means saying no to some wonderful opportunities. It means saying no to some wonderful people. It means saying no to things you'd like to do, because if you don't, then you've got too much to do, and none of those things will you do very well. So it's learning a new discipline, because we never in history have had the opportunity to do as much as we can do today. So it's a blessing and a curse. With the great thing about modern life is you can do so much, and the curse of modern life is you can do so much. And it becomes a real challenge to learn how to say no to great things.
So basically, by being selective and cutting away few options, we actually gain freedom, which is paradoxical.
Yeah, and if we don't say no, we become enslaved, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a sort of a paradox. But I think everyone has experienced the feeling of my God, I'm the prisoner of my own desires. I've created I've created a terrible situation by saying yes to too many opportunities.
Ned, thank you very much for taking your time. This was a wonderful talk. I learned a lot. I hope our audience is going to appreciate it as well.
Thank you for having me on. I've really enjoyed it.
This was The Voice of Medicine. Make sure you tune in next time and take care.